Of course, these GDP numbers should reflect an uptick in the economy there. Is it reflected in an uptick in employment as well?
Absolutely. We are seeing a rebound definitely in the employment market. At Quess, which is the largest private sector employer in India, we had about 380,000 odd people at the beginning of the pandemic. We had come down to about 325. For the first time in the last month, in October, we saw an uptick in our numbers. We expect to finish this year close to where we were at the beginning of the year. So if that is any indication of how the economy is going, I think the worst is over. The point to note here is that the number of pandemic-related cases, the caseload has come down from what was in the 90,000s to almost half of that. So there is clearly an improvement on the ground, which is reflecting in employment as well.
Now, at the beginning of the lockdowns, we saw desperate scenes of people trying to get back to the villages of India. Now, has that rural, or should I say the urban to rural migration reversed itself into becoming a return of those workers into the cities? And how many of them have got jobs since they got back? That's the question.
Sure. So, we have about 480 million people in the workforce in India, out of which about 220 million is in the farm workforce, and another 120 million of migrant labor. The 120 million is what you refer to as the people who went back when the pandemic happened. So it was basically an untrained situation that everybody was called to react to, and therefore people went back to places of safety which they imagined was their houses. But almost 60 million people have come back at least to their work spots. Urban demand, which is basically fueled by construction and real estate, is getting a lot of people back. Also, MSMEs with government support are beginning to open up. So I think we are going to see maybe between 6 and 7% unemployment overall in India, which was the number pre-COVID, versus about 20 to 22% that happened in the first 3 months of COVID. That's a reflection. Employment has moved up in India.
Yeah, and Ajit, this begs the question, how people who are hiring decided to pay their workers less than they were before and put them onto more onerous contracts. What's the deal?
So 2-3 things are happening in India in the labor market. One is that there's a structural change on the demand side happening in the labor market, because there's more need for people, and migrant workers are being sought for. Second is that there is a process of labor law reforms taking place, as a result of which there's more flexibility in employment. There is a factor of ease of doing business that's going up significantly, which means the atmosphere and the sentiment regarding investment is changing a lot in India. This, coupled with the fact that there's pent-up demand, is causing a re-rating of the Indian labor market. About 70% of the companies in India had job cuts. Almost 90% of them are now going back to pre-COVID level salaries. So that's a good sign.
Ajit, it's Juliet in Singapore. We're hearing reports specifically from the Business Standard that there could be a vaccine available in India by February, which would be great news. How does that change, I guess, hiring thoughts as well, in terms of the fact that the pandemic will hopefully be less severe in a country that has been hit incredibly hard?
So there is a realization across the board that the vaccine will take at least about 2 years to get around to the entire population. So we need to have a holding operation and a plan B that sustains economic activity with the COVID. So in that case, there has to be one level of activity that manages the pandemic, another level of activity that keeps economic activity going. Economic activity will be sustained only if there's discipline in the way that behavior is displayed in such a situation, and that community and society is beginning to absorb progressively. So I think the vaccine coming in, while it is, it's very good news. It causes a lot of enthusiasm among society, but I think it's going to be a longer term. It's going to be a longer term effect that it will show, and it will take us maybe about a couple of years.
But does it change any thoughts in terms of hiring, particularly when we look at a lot of the workers that haven't been able to isolate in India? It's not a country where a lot of people have been able to stay at home.
definitely once the vaccine comes home and then the high-risk community plus healthcare workers are inoculated first, there'll be a different approach to, and there'll be a different motivation level to employment itself. We're waiting for it to happen. Perhaps only after the effectiveness of the vaccine is clearly established, we'll have a clearer picture. But those industries that were closed pre-pandemic, like hospitality, airlines, lifestyle, shopping malls, etc., beginning to slowly open up. And that itself is having its impact on the Indian economy. Clearly, the worst is over. I think all high-frequency indicators also are looking up. Stuff like e-way tolls, petrol consumption, GST collections, unemployment levels have come down. So I think we are in for a period of significant growth in India in the next, let's say, 4 quarters.
So let's talk specifically about your company and how you could see things getting better, because that is an encouraging sign. We understand you've got a little bit of technology innovation that's been underway. 2020 has certainly propelled tech further, and also some reduction in your debt. Tell us about that, and I guess where you see Quess for 2021.
So this has been a very significant year for us. We've got new leadership. Our debt levels have come down by half. Our cash collections have gone up significantly. And we are on a path to getting to an ROE level of 20% by 2023. We have visibility to that, and our cost levels have come down by 20% also. So these are long-term changes in our company, and we are on a path where we can absorb the demand at a lesser cost level and increase our return to investors. Also, the investments that we put in about a couple of years ago to build the tech platform and our asset management platforms is beginning to pay off. We can see the numbers that's coming in. So it's going to plan.
Ajit, I just want to talk overall about the things you've alluded to so far during the interview. And one of them would be, with the way that the hiring patterns, as you perceive them, have been panning out, do you see a move up the value chain for India in some ways?
So I think that's also going to be a function of investments that's coming in. If you look at recent indications of investment, there's more coming in the electronic manufacturing space. We've got more investment in phone and technology. Our workforce levels in technology is right now 4 million people. That's a significant number. Plus, there's related supply points for the tech industry as well. About half of them could potentially be in the flexible staffing, on a flexible staffing basis. I think the tech levels in India is significantly going up in pharma, in pure tech, in products, and in telecom, all of which will reflect in a greater value-added contribution to our GDP levels.
All right, Ajit, my final question, it goes back to the whole, pattern of urban to rural migration and then the reverse. Did people find jobs in the villages? And did they kind of sense that perhaps they didn't have to go back to the rat race of the corporate life in the big metropolitan cities? Did you get any evidence of that?
Not really, because India's had a good monsoon. So rural demand in India is really up. For these 120 million to go back and fit into the social milieu is difficult. They're used to an urban lifestyle. Their kids go to schools in cities here. So many factors have contributed to their return. Also, earning capacity in urban centers is greater than in rural areas. Some of them were on government-related schemes, and the schemes have some limitations in how much you can make. So I think these are temporary patches. It's not going to work for the long term. The 120 million will have to be housed, will have to be taken care of, and the government and the private sector should come together to ensure that they have a safe passage back to their original jobs. We're not going to see a permanent reversal of migrant labor back to the rural settings.